Get out. There's no way we can sell you a $10,000 package. At Platinum Travel, the prestigious high-end travel agency located in the heart of Manhattan, branch manager Richard Thompson was treating an elderly black couple with an intimidating attitude, his voice dripping with contempt and discriminatory undertones. His shabby treatment of these potential customers was appalling to witness. At this moment, everyone in the store had assumed they were just elderly Social Security recipients who had wandered in off the street, merely window shopping with no real intention or ability to purchase anything. However, when the true identity of this distinguished elderly couple was finally revealed, Thompson would witness hell unfold before his very eyes. No one present, not the staff, not the other customers, not even Thompson himself, had anticipated the dramatic great reversal that would come from a single business card. The gentle afternoon sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Platinum Travel's Manhattan flagship store, casting warm rays across the interior where glossy brochures of luxury resorts from around the world were beautifully displayed on polished mahogany shelves. Each brochure was perfectly arranged as if exhibiting precious jewels in a high-end boutique, with destinations like the Maldives, the French Riviera, and exclusive African safaris prominently featured. The store itself exuded an atmosphere of exclusivity and sophistication, with its marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and plush seating areas designed to make wealthy clients feel at home. Today was the end of the month, the day of President Jonathan Morrison's regular inspection visit. All the staff members were working with considerably more tension than usual, their movements careful and deliberate. Their shoulders were slightly stiff, and occasional nervous glances were exchanged between colleagues. The president made it a point to visit the site without fail every single month to personally observe the situation, evaluate staff performance, and ensure that the company's high standards were being maintained. His visits were both anticipated and dreaded, as they could lead to either commendations or consequences, depending on what he observed. At that moment, during the quiet lull of the afternoon, an elderly black couple slowly entered through the store's glass doors. The husband, James Washington, was 70 years old, a distinguished-looking man despite his simple attire. He wore a gray windbreaker that had seen better days, and worn canvas shoes that spoke of many miles walked. His outfit was decidedly simple and unpretentious. His hair, now mixed with gray and white, was unadorned and naturally styled, and deep wrinkles were etched into his dark skin lines that told stories of a life fully lived. However, despite his modest appearance, there was something unmistakable dwelling in his eyes. A quiet dignity, a calm confidence that couldn't be purchased or faked. His wife, Dorothy Washington, was 65 years old, a graceful woman whose warm presence was immediately noticeable to anyone who truly looked. She wore a faded cardigan that had lost much of its original color over the years, paired with a plain skirt that was clean but clearly not designer wear. She carried a well-worn handbag that showed signs of years of faithful service. As they entered, she gently placed her hand on her husband's arm, a gesture of both affection and habit developed over decades of marriage, as they looked around the store with curious, observant eyes. The staff members in the store immediately exchanged glances with one another when they caught sight of the elderly couple. Their eyes met across the sales floor, and unspoken judgments passed between them in those brief moments of eye contact. "Are they lost?" one staff member whispered to another behind a raised hand. "Social Security recipients can't possibly afford international travel, right?" another murmured skeptically. "Just window shoppers, probably. Maybe they're killing time," a third added with a dismissive shrug. These whispered voices floated through the store like an unpleasant undercurrent, creating an atmosphere of judgment and presumption. The other staff members nodded in agreement, their expressions revealing their shared assumption that these visitors were not genuine customers worthy of their time and attention. While no one else approached the elderly couple, everyone finding suddenly urgent tasks at their desks or reasons to look busy with paperwork, only one person stood up from her station. Maya Santos, a new counselor, rose from her chair with determination in her eyes. Maya was a 24-year-old newcomer who had been with the company for only a year and a half. In the grand scheme of the company's hierarchy, she was still very much at the bottom rung. There was still so much she didn't understand about the unwritten rules and politics of the workplace. She often made mistakes, sometimes struggled with the complex booking systems, and occasionally felt overwhelmed by the demands of high-end clients. However, deep in her heart burned a strong belief, a core value that she held dear. She wanted to treat every customer without discrimination, regardless of their appearance, background, or perceived wealth. Every person who walked through those doors deserved respect and quality service. She could hear the staff around her whispering, their voices carrying just enough for her to catch the gist of their dismissive comments. A small hesitation arose in Maya's heart as she stood there. Her hand paused on her desk. Should she, as a newcomer, as someone still learning the ropes, approach customers that her seniors, people with far more experience and supposedly better judgment, were deliberately avoiding? What if they were right? What if she wasted her time? What if Thompson saw her and criticized her for poor customer discernment? But even as these doubts flickered through her mind, she couldn't just leave them standing there alone and ignored. That would be wrong. That would violate everything she believed about human dignity and customer service. Maya took a deep breath, feeling her lungs fill with air and her resolve strengthen, and mustered all her courage. She smoothed down her blazer, put on her most professional expression, and walked toward the couple with purposeful strides. "Welcome to Platinum Travel. May I help you find something today?" Maya's voice was filled with genuine warmth and welcome, not the fake cheerfulness that some service workers adopted. Though she felt a bit nervous, her palms were slightly sweaty and her heart beat a little faster than normal. She displayed her best smile, one that reached her eyes and conveyed real friendliness. That warm, authentic smile had an immediate effect. Dorothy's expression softened noticeably, the slight wariness in her eyes melting away to reveal appreciation and kindness. "Why, thank you, dear," Dorothy responded, her voice gentle and cultured. "We'd like to consult about an anniversary trip. Do you have any recommended travel destinations? We're open to suggestions." Hearing this, Maya's eyes lit up with genuine excitement and interest. Her entire demeanor became more animated. To think these two people had walked together through life for 50 years, how absolutely wonderful. How rare and precious. Pure respect for the couple who had walked together hand in hand for such a remarkably long time was embedded in her response. In today's world of frequent divorces and broken relationships, a 50-year marriage was something truly special, something to be celebrated and honored. "Congratulations on your golden wedding anniversary." "That's so wonderful and inspiring," Maya said with heartfelt enthusiasm. 50 years together, that's an incredible achievement. She welcomed the couple with open arms and gestured toward the comfortable seating area. Please, come have a seat over here. You must be tired from walking around the city. Can I get you some water or coffee?" "Oh my, thank you so much. How kind of you." Dorothy smiled happily, her face lighting up with pleasure at being treated with such consideration and respect. That gentle smile, filled with warmth and gratitude, made Maya's heart feel even more convinced that she had made the right choice in approaching them. The couple settled into the plush chairs, and Maya sat across from them, pulling out her consultation notepad and pen. "Now then," Maya began, leaning forward attentively, her pen poised above the paper. "Which region of the world were you hoping to visit? Do you have any particular dreams or destinations in mind?" Maya asked with shining, enthusiastic eyes. For the novice that she was someone still building her client base and learning the intricacies of travel planning, being able to help with such a special, meaningful anniversary trip was truly an honor. This wasn't just booking a vacation, this was helping create memories for a couple who had spent half a century together. The responsibility felt both exciting and humbling. Dorothy smiled happily, her eyes distant for a moment as if imagining the trip already. "We were hoping to slowly travel through Europe together. We've always dreamed of it, but life got in the way. You know how it is. Children, careers, responsibilities. But now, finally, we have the time." "Europe? That sounds absolutely wonderful," Maya responded with enthusiasm, her imagination already painting pictures. "I can just picture it walking hand in hand through the romantic streets of Paris, admiring the art in the Louvre, watching the sunset together over the ancient ruins in Rome, perhaps taking a gondola ride in Venice, or enjoying the beautiful countryside of Tuscany. It would surely make the most beautiful, unforgettable memories." Maya's pure joy and genuine excitement were contagious, and the elderly couple's expressions brightened considerably. They sat up a little straighter, their smiles growing wider. James reached over and gently squeezed Dorothy's hand, and they exchanged a look that spoke of shared dreams and deep connection. Maya asked politely while taking careful notes in her pad, wanting to capture every detail and preference. "What budget range were you considering for this trip? This will help me suggest the most appropriate options for you. We have various packages at different price points." Between Maya and the couple floated a peaceful, comfortable sense of anticipation for the journey ahead. The atmosphere was warm and collaborative, exactly what a consultation should feel like. However, at that very moment, Maya suddenly felt a distinct cold gaze boring into her back, an unpleasant sensation that made the hairs on her neck stand up. When she turned around to look, she saw branch manager Richard Thompson walking toward them from behind her desk, his expression already set in disapproving lines. Thompson, a 45-year-old man who prided himself on his sales record and his ability to identify quality clients, looked the elderly black couple up and down with a slow, scrutinizing, almost insulting gaze. His eyes traveled from their shoes to their clothing to their worn accessories, taking in every detail. Then his face showed a clearly displeased, contemptuous expression. He furrowed his brow deeply, creating harsh lines on his forehead. And the irritation of why are these people here taking up space in MY's store was blatantly, almost grotesquely displayed on his face. He made no effort whatsoever to hide his disdain. "Miss Santos." Thompson's voice cut through the pleasant atmosphere like a knife, cold and sharp. "You don't need to handle these customers. Please work on other tasks. There's paperwork that needs filing." Thompson's voice had a cold, dismissive ring to it, each word carefully chosen to convey his displeasure. It was as if he didn't recognize the elderly couple as legitimate customers at all, as if they were somehow intruders who had wandered into a space where they didn't belong. Confusion and discomfort spread through Maya's heart like spilled ink on paper. Her smile faltered slightly. This didn't feel right. This wasn't how they were supposed to treat people. "But manager," Maya said carefully, trying to keep her voice respectful but also advocate for her clients. "These customers are looking for assistance with planning a golden anniversary trip." "That's enough, Miss Santos," Thompson interrupted, his tone becoming noticeably stronger and more authoritative, brooking no argument. "Come over here for a moment. Now." His command was clear and non-negotiable. Maya felt her heart sink, but she maintained her professional composure. "I'm so sorry," she said to the couple, genuine regret in her voice. "I need to step away for just a moment, but I promise I'll be right back. Please make yourselves comfortable." When Maya spoke these words, the elderly couple nodded with understanding smiles, showing no offense or impatience. "That's perfectly fine, dear. Don't worry about us," James said kindly, his deep voice reassuring. "We'll wait right here while looking at these brochures. Take your time." Maya bowed slightly to the elderly couple in a gesture of respect, then reluctantly headed toward Thompson, who stood waiting with crossed arms and an expression of barely contained irritation. Then Thompson, holding a thick file of sales documents in his hand, turned to Maya with a confident, almost smug expression on his face. His posture was that of someone who believed he was about to impart invaluable wisdom to an ignorant subordinate. "Miss Santos," he began, his voice taking on a condescending, lecture-like tone, "I'm going to give you a valuable lesson today. Consider yourself fortunate that I'm taking time out of my busy schedule to educate you properly." Thompson wore a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. It was the kind of smile that suggested he was enjoying his position of authority a bit too much. While pointing directly at the elderly couple with an outstretched finger, showing no concern for discretion or their feelings, he continued in a voice loud enough that they could probably hear. "The basics of customer service in a high-end establishment like this," he said, drawing out his words as if speaking to a child, "are identifying the right customers, the ones who are actually worth our time and effort. Time is limited, after all. We can't waste it on people who can't afford our services. That's just basic business sense." In Thompson's eyes was the unmistakable color of harassment disguised as education, the look of someone who enjoyed wielding power over those beneath him in the company hierarchy. His expression showed that he believed he was being entirely reasonable and professional, when in fact he was doing the opposite. "Now, I want you to think carefully and answer honestly," Thompson continued, his voice dripping with false patience. "What do you think? Do you genuinely believe you can sell a $500,000 European cruise package to those people?" He gestured dismissively toward the Washingtons. "Look at them. Really look at them. Use your common sense." Maya's face twisted with confusion and growing discomfort. Her brow furrowed, and she felt a knot forming in her stomach. This entire conversation felt wrong on every level. Everything she had learned about customer service, everything she believed about treating people with dignity, was being contradicted by her superior. "But manager," Maya protested weakly, her voice uncertain, "the customers haven't even told us their budget yet. They haven't said anything about their financial situation. How can we possibly—" "That's enough," Thompson cut her off sharply, his patience already worn thin. "Just answer the question. This is also part of your education. part of learning how this business really works, not the idealistic nonsense they teach you in training seminars. Thompson's voice carried an unmistakable note of intimidation, making it clear that this wasn't really a question at all, it was a test, and there was only one correct answer he wanted to hear. "You need to develop an eye for reality, Miss Santos," he continued, his tone becoming even more condescending. "You need to learn how to assess a customer's true value at a glance. If you can't do that, you won't make it in this industry. You'll waste countless hours on people who will never make a purchase, and your numbers will suffer. Is that what you want?" Thompson then showed Maya a printed spreadsheet, pointing at the numbers with his pen, tapping them for emphasis. "Miss Santos, look carefully at this month's sales figures. Study them. See this number here? That's me. And this one? That's you." He paused dramatically, letting the comparison sink in. "I have more than 10 times your sales revenue. 10 times. Do you understand what that means? Do you see the difference between us?" Indeed, the numbers didn't lie. Thompson's sales figures were more than 10 times Maya's total, and Maya's own numbers showed that she was just barely meeting her quota, struggling to stay above the minimum threshold. The evidence was right there in black and white, undeniable and somewhat humiliating. "I have an eye for identifying upper-class clients, the ones who actually have money to spend," Thompson said, his voice filled with pride and self-satisfaction. "I don't waste precious time on dreamers and window shoppers. I only deal with customers who can actually pay for our premium services. That's why I'm successful. That's why my numbers are what they are. That's why I'm the branch manager and you're still a junior counselor." He looked once again at the elderly couple, his gaze sweeping over them with barely concealed contempt. His lip curled slightly in distaste as he took in their worn clothing and modest accessories. "That elderly couple is no good. Surely you can see that. You understand, right? Just look at how they're dressed. Look at their shoes, their clothes, that old handbag. They're just Social Security recipients living on fixed incomes, with unrealistic dreams that are far beyond their means. They probably saw one of our advertisements and got ideas above their station." In Thompson's mind, the conclusion that the elderly couple weren't worth dealing with, that they were essentially wasting valuable floor space in his store, had already been firmly reached. There was no room for doubt or reconsideration. He had judged them, found them wanting, and decided their fate. Thompson walked back toward where the elderly couple sat, patiently waiting, and as he approached them, he put on an obviously fake smile, a smile so artificial that it was almost offensive. That smile was clearly forced, completely insincere, and his eyes weren't smiling at all. In fact, his eyes remained cold and calculating, completely at odds with the expression his mouth was forming. "Customers," Thompson began, his voice dripping with false politeness that was somehow more insulting than outright rudeness. "I do apologize for any inconvenience, but I must inform you that this store specializes in luxury travel experiences." Thompson said this coldly, emphasizing certain words to make his meaning crystal clear. "We don't handle plans that would fit within, shall we say, more modest budgets. Perhaps you might be more comfortable at a different establishment." James Washington looked directly at Thompson, meeting his eyes without flinching, his gaze steady and calm. When he spoke, his voice was measured and dignified. "Why would you make that judgment without even asking about our budget? What makes you so certain of our financial situation?" Thompson's face twitched slightly. This was an unexpected reaction. Most people in their position would have been embarrassed and left by now. Why were these people being so persistent? "No, no," Thompson said, his smile becoming even more strained. "To be completely honest with you, all our consultation slots are fully booked today. Every single one. We simply don't have the capacity to take on new clients right now. We're absolutely swamped." "Huh?" Maya's head turned sharply toward Thompson. She couldn't help but look at him with confusion and growing dismay written across her face. This was a blatant lie, and she knew it. This store did have a reservation system in place. That much was true. But at this particular time, right now, this very moment, there were several staff members with open schedules, sitting at their desks, who could have easily handled a consultation. The appointment book was not full. She had checked it herself, not 30 minutes ago. However, Thompson apparently wanted to turn the elderly couple away at all costs, by any means necessary, and while staring pointedly at their shabby clothing and worn accessories with barely disguised disgust, he continued with his performance. "If you'd like, however," Thompson said with exaggerated helpfulness that fooled no one, I'd be happy to direct you to a nearby travel agency just a few blocks from here. They cater to a more diverse clientele. They have plans starting around $10,000, which might be more appropriate for your situation. Very nice people there, very accommodating. The other staff members around them were watching Branch Manager Thompson's interaction with wide eyes, some looking uncomfortable, others nodding in approval. But regardless of their personal feelings, no one could bring themselves to interrupt or contradict him. No one dared to speak up or offer a different opinion. They all knew the score. They knew that if they upset their superior, if they contradicted him in front of customers, if they made him look bad, their own positions would be in danger. They could face reduced hours, poor performance reviews, or even termination. In this economy, jobs weren't easy to come by. Everyone kept their heads down, suddenly finding their computer screens or paperwork absolutely fascinating, and pretended not to see what was happening just a few feet away from them. Come on now, Thompson said, making shooing motions with his hands as if herding animals, his patience clearly exhausted. If you go just a little way from here, down about 3 blocks and take a left, there's a budget agency called Travel for Less. I'm sure you've probably seen their advertisements on the subway. They're much more suited to your needs. You can even tell them we referred you mentioned Platinum Travel. They'll take good care of you there. Thompson tried to guide the elderly couple toward the exit with his body language, positioning himself between them and the interior of the store. His gestures clearly contained discrimination, and anyone watching with honest eyes could see it. The subtext was obvious. You don't belong here. Leave. James and Dorothy Washington quietly looked around the store, their eyes moving slowly, taking everything in with careful observation. There was something in their gaze, something intangible but powerful, a strange quality that was hard to define. Their bearing had a quiet dignity, a calm authority that seemed to come from deep within. It was as if years of experience had cultivated in them a deep insight, a wisdom that allowed them to see through surface appearances to the truth beneath. Their quiet dignity filled the space around them, almost tangible in its intensity. I see, James said quietly, his voice betraying no emotion. But would it be possible for us to just look at your brochures for reference? We won't take up much of your time, just a quick browse to see what options exist. However, Thompson's face showed clear annoyance at this continued persistence. His jaw clenched slightly. Why wouldn't these people just leave? That's why I'm trying to tell you, Thompson said, his voice rising in both volume and irritation, abandoning any pretense of politeness now. There's no travel package here that people like you can afford. Don't you understand? This isn't some community center bulletin board with flyers for bus trips to Atlantic City. We're talking about 6-figure luxury vacations. Thompson's voice grew even louder, carrying clearly across the entire store now. He was insulting the elderly couple in a voice loud enough for other customers browsing in different sections to hear, not caring who witnessed his behavior. Other customers' heads turned, some looked shocked, others quickly looked away, embarrassed to be witnessing such a scene. Social Security recipients coming to a high-end luxury travel agency, Thompson continued, shaking his head in apparent disbelief. You really should know your place in society. You should understand what's appropriate for people in your situation. This is a waste of everyone's time, including your own. Maya felt her hands clenching into fists at her sides. She couldn't stand by silently anymore. Gathering every ounce of courage she possessed, she spoke up, though her voice came out smaller than she intended. Manager Thompson, Maya said carefully, her voice almost a whisper. The customers just expressed that they want to look at the brochures. That's a reasonable request. We're a travel agency. People look at brochures. That's normal. There's no harm in. Thompson's face immediately twisted with anger, his features contorting. His head whipped around to stare at Maya. Glared at with such sharp, hostile eyes, Maya felt her courage evaporating. She swallowed her remaining words, the rest of her sentence dying in her throat. Miss Santos, Thompson said, his voice low and dangerous now, each word carefully enunciated. I strongly suggest you don't say unnecessary things. Don't contradict me in front of customers. These people are not customers. Let me make that absolutely clear. They are not customers. They're just window shoppers, time wasters, people who wandered in from the street with no real intention or ability to purchase anything. Thompson's voice echoed through the store like a pronouncement, like a declaration intended for everyone to hear. It was as if he were making an official announcement. Other customers throughout the store turned around to see what the commotion was about. their faces showing various expressions of curiosity, discomfort, and in some cases, agreement with Thompson's assessment. The air became heavy and oppressive, thick with tension. The atmosphere in the store, which had been pleasant and professional just minutes ago, had completely soured. Staff members shrank back even further into their workstations, making themselves as small and inconspicuous as possible. Their eyes fixed firmly on their computer screens or papers, absolutely determined not to get involved. Besides, Thompson continued, warming to his subject now, you should understand that we're basically a membership-based establishment. We operate on an exclusive model. Thompson laughed through his nose, a short, derisive sound. We refuse walk-ins from just anyone off the street. That's our policy, or at least, it should be. We're not some Greyhound bus station ticket counter, especially people like you, he said, looking directly at James and Dorothy, his meaning unmistakable. James and Dorothy Washington said nothing in response to this barrage of insults and discriminatory treatment. They didn't argue, didn't get angry, didn't cause a scene. They just stood there quietly, with remarkable composure and dignity. Their figures were like great, ancient trees that wouldn't sway or bend even in the midst of a violent storm. No matter what insults Thompson threw at them, no matter how offensive his words became, their expressions didn't change one single bit. They maintained their calm, their dignity, their quiet strength. Still, after a long moment of silence, James spoke quietly, his voice measured and thoughtful. I understand now. We're not suitable for this store. That's what you're saying, isn't it? We're not the right kind of people for an establishment like this. Those words, spoken so calmly and with such dignity, filled Maya's heart with pain that was almost physical. Her chest felt tight, as if someone were squeezing her heart. She felt crushing guilt and shame, though she had done nothing wrong herself. The feelings of apology and regret overwhelmed her. Her eyes stung with tears that she fought to hold back. She felt helpless, powerless to stop this injustice unfolding before her, and that helplessness made her feel sick with frustration and anger, not at the customers, but at her own inability to stand up more forcefully to Thompson. I'm so sorry, Maya whispered, her voice barely audible, more to herself than to anyone else. I'm so sorry. James turned his gaze to Maya, and when he looked at her, his eyes were filled with kindness and understanding. It was a look that conveyed forgiveness and recognition of her good intentions. Young lady, James said gently, his voice warm despite the cold treatment they'd received. You are not at fault here. Please don't apologize. You've done nothing wrong. And then he gave her a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes, a smile that somehow made everything feel a little bit less terrible. Thank you. Thank you for your kindness and respect. It's been quite a while since we met such a sincere, genuine staff member. Your parents raised you well. Irritation and frustration built up rapidly in Thompson's heart, like pressure in a boiling kettle. He didn't like this at all. He didn't like how calm this elderly couple remained in the face of his obvious attempts to dismiss them. He didn't like their quiet dignity, their refusal to be embarrassed or humiliated. Most people in their situation would have left already, faces burning with shame. But these two? They just stood there, composed and serene, as if they had every right to be here. It was infuriating. What's so funny about this? Thompson snapped, his voice taking on an edge of anger now. In business, you have to face reality. You have to deal with facts, not fantasies. This isn't a job where we sell dreams to people who can't afford them. We're not in the business of encouraging delusions. Genuine anger mixed into Thompson's voice now, his professional veneer cracking to reveal the ugliness beneath. Please, just take trips that are appropriate for your means, for your station in life. Go to Florida, take a cruise to the Bahamas, visit your grandchildren, whatever it is that people like you do, he continued, his voice dripping with condescension. Besides, our store has standards to maintain. We have a reputation. If people dressed like you come and go freely, if we allow just anyone to browse our offerings, it causes problems for our other customers, our real customers. They expect a certain atmosphere, a certain clientele. Surely you can understand that? Thompson's insults seemed to know no bounds, flowing freely now that he'd abandoned any pretense of professionalism. Coming to a high-end establishment dressed so shabbily, so inappropriately, you clearly have no common sense, no understanding of social norms. Aren't you embarrassed? Don't you have any sense of shame? And then his final words came out, cold and final. and they seemed to freeze the atmosphere in the entire store. Please leave now. I'm asking you no. I'm telling you don't ever come back here. Not tomorrow, not next week, not ever. Your presence lowers the quality of our store, damages our brand, and frankly, makes our legitimate customers uncomfortable. James and Dorothy Washington, seemingly unmoved by Thompson's increasingly abusive language and blatantly discriminatory treatment, slowly and deliberately walked away from where they'd been standing. But they didn't walk toward the exit as Thompson clearly wanted. Instead, they moved toward the display of brochures on the far wall. There was a strange dignity in their steps, an unhurried grace that spoke of people who were completely comfortable in their own skin, regardless of what others thought of them. They stopped in front of a particularly luxurious brochure displayed in a special acrylic holder, the one advertising the Golden Anniversary European Luxury Cruise, with its glossy photos of opulent suites and exclusive destinations. This cruise looks like a nice route, James murmured quietly, picking up the brochure carefully and examining it with what appeared to be genuine interest and knowledge. His eyes scanned the itinerary with the focus of someone who actually understood what they were looking at. Thompson, watching this, laughed through his nose, a short, derisive snort of amusement. Yes, well, that particular package is our premier offering. It's a $1 million plan designed exclusively for VIP clients, our most elite customers. But obviously, it's completely beyond your reach, isn't it? I mean, let's be realistic here. However, James's next words changed Thompson's expression completely, wiping the smug smile right off his face. Hasn't the service at this hotel declined somewhat recently? James asked, his tone conversational but knowledgeable, pointing to one of the featured properties in the brochure. I remember when their standards were much higher. Confusion ran across Thompson's face like a wave. His brow furrowed deeply, and his mouth opened slightly. What? What are you pretending to know? What are you talking about? James continued, seemingly oblivious to Thompson's confusion, while picking up the brochure and examining it more closely. His movements were careful and deliberate, like those of an experienced expert examining materials in their field of expertise, someone who knew exactly what to look for and what questions to ask. The Ritz in Paris, the Savoy in London, the Plaza in New York, they're all first-class establishments, certainly. Top-tier properties with long histories. But recently, I've noticed that true hospitality, genuine personalized service, has been lost somewhat. The standards have slipped. They're coasting on their reputations now rather than earning them daily. Dorothy also quietly added her voice to the conversation, nodding in agreement with her husband. Especially the breakfast service at this particular hotel, she said, tapping the page with one elegant finger. It used to be so much more attentive, so much more refined. The attention to detail was extraordinary. But the last time we were there, perhaps 18 months ago, it had definitely declined. The staff seemed rushed. The presentation wasn't what it once was. Thompson felt himself wavering, his confidence suddenly shaken. Something wasn't adding up here. Why did this elderly couple, these people he'd assumed were just poor Social Security recipients, know such detailed insider information about the luxury hotels listed in this very expensive brochure? How could they possibly know about service standards at properties that cost $2,000 per night? His heart began to race, a flutter of uncertainty in his chest. That can't be right, Thompson stammered, his voice less certain now. These are world-class luxury hotels, 5-star properties. They're consistently rated among the best in the world. They have impeccable reputations. We've traveled extensively for many years, James answered calmly, his tone matter-of-fact and unassuming. So we've developed a certain familiarity with these establishments. One tends to notice things when you've stayed at a property multiple times over the years. Then James looked directly at Thompson, his gaze suddenly sharp and penetrating. Or perhaps you're not personally aware of the current state of service at these hotels? Have you actually stayed at any of them yourself? Or are you just relying on marketing materials? Thompson's expression twisted uncomfortably at James's pointed question, delivered so calmly but with such clear implication. Surprise also appeared in Maya's eyes, which had been watching this entire exchange with growing astonishment. Who exactly was this elderly couple? How did they know so much? What was really going on here? However, Thompson, feeling his authority and credibility being challenged, continued to push back aggressively. He could feel his position becoming precarious, feel the ground shifting beneath his feet. But his pride, his enormous, inflated pride, wouldn't allow him to back down or admit he might have been wrong. Even so, Thompson said, his voice rising defensively, coming to the store. Dressed like that, are you trying to show off? Are you trying to prove some kind of point? Because overreaching, pretending to be something you're not, that's not good. It's actually quite pathetic. Anger and defensiveness mixed into Thompson's voice now, making it sharp and ugly. Honestly, if you really had money, I think you should use it for practical things. Nursing home admission fees, for example. Medical care. Long-term care insurance. That's what people your age should be thinking about, not expensive vacations. Thompson said this sarcastically, cruelly, trying to regain control of the situation by being even more insulting. Let's be realistic and think practically about this. At your standard of living, given your obvious financial constraints, a domestic trip, maybe a nice hot spring resort in upstate New York, or perhaps a bus tour to see the fall foliage in Vermont, that's about the most you can reasonably manage. That's more your speed. Then, for the first time since entering the store, a hint of sternness, just a trace, but unmistakable, mixed into James's voice. His tone remained calm and measured, but there was steel underneath now. Travel, James said quietly but firmly, is something that enriches life, that broadens perspective and deepens understanding. It's not something you do for show, not something you do to impress others or prove your worth. Anyone who truly loves travel, who understands what it means to explore the world, should understand that fundamental truth. The moment those words echoed through the store, the atmosphere changed palpably. It was as if the temperature had dropped several degrees. James's quiet dignity, his natural authority, gradually spread to affect everyone around him. Even the staff members who had been studiously ignoring the situation couldn't help but glance up, caught by something in his voice. What's truly important, James continued, his words measured and weighted with experience, is serving every customer with sincerity and heart. Every single person who walks through your door deserves respect and consideration. You shouldn't judge people by their appearance, by their clothes or their accessories or the car they drove here in. Dorothy gently added to her husband's words, her voice soft but carrying clearly through the now quiet store. Isn't that what true hospitality is really about? Isn't that the foundation of genuine service? Seeing the person, not just the packaging? It was as if a person with genuine authority, with real knowledge and experience, was gradually revealing their true identity, slowly pulling back a curtain to show what lay beneath. The air itself seemed to shimmer with the revelation. Something resonated deeply in Maya's heart as she listened to these words. Her chest felt tight with emotion. The words of this elderly couple had such weight, such gravity, clearly backed by deep experience and extensive knowledge. This wasn't theory or idealism, this was wisdom earned through decades of lived experience. This was truth. However, Thompson was too agitated, too defensive, too committed to his position to truly listen or understand. He had no time for philosophy or idealism. He glanced at his watch anxiously, a nervous, quick movement. It was almost time for President Morrison's regular inspection. The president would be arriving any minute now. He absolutely could not, under any circumstances, allow the president to see this shabby elderly couple here in the store. What would Morrison think? How would it reflect on Thompson's judgment and management? Please, just leave now, Thompson said urgently, his voice tight with stress and urgency. If you come dressed like that, if you remain here looking like this, it genuinely lowers the store's standards. It sends the wrong message to our actual customers. Even more anxiety and urgency mixed into Thompson's voice now. While checking his watch repeatedly every 30 seconds or so, he made increasingly frantic shooing motions with his hands, waving them toward the exit as if trying to physically push the couple out with air pressure alone. Don't ever come back. I'm serious about this. Your presence here. At that precise moment, James said quietly, cutting through Thompson's agitated words like a knife through butter. About this golden anniversary, European cruise package. The store was instantly wrapped in absolute silence, a silence so complete and profound it was almost painful. The staff's chatter stopped mid-sentence. The customers' footsteps disappeared as if everyone had frozen in place. Even the ambient background music seemed to fade away. It was as if time itself had stopped, suspended in this single moment, that kind of eerie, breathless stillness that descends when something momentous is about to happen. Thompson's mouth moved wordlessly, opening and closing like a fish out of water. His brain seemed unable to form words, unable to process what he'd just heard. What are you saying? What did you just say? I'd like to purchase this package, James repeated calmly, his voice clear and steady, each word carefully enunciated. The Golden Anniversary European Luxury Cruise. The one you just mentioned costs $1 million. I'd like to pay in full. Cash payment, if that's acceptable, or wire transfer if you prefer. James's words were concise, direct, and carried not a trace of hesitation or doubt. This wasn't a question or an inquiry. This was a statement of intent from someone accustomed to making significant financial decisions. Thompson's hands trembled noticeably as he fumbled to pull out a calculator from his pocket, nearly dropping it in his agitation. His fingers shook as he tried to punch in numbers. Though he didn't really need to calculate anything, the price was clearly stated. Please stop joking around, Thompson stuttered, his voice climbing higher with each word, taking on an almost hysterical quality. This isn't funny. You can't just... This is $1 million we're talking about. $1 million. Do you understand what that means? Thompson's voice was shaking badly now, trembling with a mixture of disbelief, fear, and anger. In his heart, deep down, he completely didn't believe what he was hearing. His mind refused to accept it. There was absolutely no way, no possible way that this elderly black couple, dressed in worn, shabby clothing that probably came from thrift stores, could actually have $1 million to spend on a vacation. It was impossible. It had to be some kind of elaborate prank or cruel joke at his expense. Are you absolutely certain about this? Thompson asked, his voice dripping with skepticism and suspicion. Because this isn't something to joke about. Making false claims about purchasing luxury travel packages could be considered fraud. I could report you for this. I could call the police. He shook his head vigorously, trying to regain his composure and authority. There's no way you're actually serious. This is ridiculous. An elderly couple dressed like you, looking like you do, claiming you want to spend $1 million? Please. Do you think I'm stupid? Thompson's thoughts raced frantically. They're just saying they'll apply, thinking it will make me panic, thinking I'll suddenly start treating them better. They're trying to make me look foolish, trying to teach me some kind of lesson. Well, it won't work. I can see right through this charade. James remained perfectly calm in the face of Thompson's agitation. Slowly, deliberately, he reached into the inner pocket of his worn gray windbreaker and pulled out his wallet. It was made of quality leather, fine, expensive leather that had aged beautifully over many years of use. The patina and wear showed it was well-loved and well-maintained, the kind of wallet that improves with age rather than deteriorating. Seeing this wallet, Thompson's face contorted with rage. He suddenly lunged forward, snatched the wallet roughly from James's hand with shocking aggression, and slammed it down on the marble floor with tremendous force. The sound echoed through the silent store like a gunshot. What is this beat-up old piece of trash? Thompson shouted, his voice now completely unprofessional, all pretense of civility abandoned. Are you seriously trying to lie to me, to make a fool of me in my own store? This is harassment. This is business interference. I will sue you. I will have you arrested for trespassing and causing a disturbance. Maya gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth in shock and horror. Several customers in the store looked genuinely disturbed by Thompson's violent behavior, their faces showing dismay and disapproval. At that precise moment, that exact, terrible moment, the store's entrance doors opened smoothly, and a well-dressed man in an expensive tailored suit appeared in the doorway. The receptionist immediately recognized him and stood up rapidly, nearly knocking over her chair in her haste. "Good morning, President Morrison," she called out, her voice perhaps a bit too loud, a bit too cheerful, trying to project normalcy into what was clearly an abnormal situation. "Ah, good morning, everyone," came the calm, measured response. The voice was cultured, controlled, and carried natural authority. Appearing in the doorway with an air of quiet dignity was President Jonathan Morrison himself, right on schedule for his monthly inspection. Thompson's face instantly turned pale, not just pale, but absolutely ashen, the color of old concrete. All blood seemed to drain from his face in a rush. This was quite literally the worst possible timing imaginable. Of all the moments for the president to arrive, why now? Why this exact moment when he was in the middle of forcibly removing customers from the store, when he just committed an act of physical aggression against a customer's property? Thompson hurriedly rushed toward the president, his movements jerky and desperate, and immediately began making excuses in a rapid, breathless stream. His words tumbled over each other in his panic. "President Morrison, sir. Sir, I can explain everything." Actually, you see, these customers here, they mistakenly came to our store. It's a simple misunderstanding. They're clearly lost or confused. I was just this moment, about to introduce them to another, more suitable travel agency nearby. One that caters to, different clientele, more budget-conscious travelers. I was handling it. Everything is under control. Thompson was frantically trying to construct a narrative that would make him look competent and professional rather than cruel and discriminatory. But his obvious panic was working against him. His gestures were too big, too theatrical. Sweat had begun to bead on his forehead. President Morrison looked at the scene before him with a slowly growing expression of deep suspicion and concern. His experienced eyes took in everything: Thompson's aggressive body language, the wallet on the floor, Maya's shocked expression, the uncomfortable looks on customers' faces, and the quiet dignity of the elderly couple. His brow furrowed deeply, and his lips pressed into a thin line. "Branch Manager Thompson," Morrison said slowly, his voice carefully controlled but carrying an undertone of steel. "What exactly are you saying? What is going on here? Why is there a wallet on my floor?" At that critical moment, James calmly bent down with unhurried grace, picked up the wallet that Thompson had so violently thrown to the floor, and stepped forward toward President Morrison. His movements were dignified and composed, showing no anger or agitation despite the abuse he'd just suffered. "I apologize," James said with quiet courtesy. "I forgot to properly introduce myself and give you my business card. That was remiss of me." He opened his wallet and extracted a business card, holding it out toward Thompson with steady hands. Thompson snatched the card from James's hand with a scornful expression, barely glancing at it. "A business card? Please. Anyone can make a business card. You can print them online for $10. This proves nothing. Now please, just leave the premises before I have security escort you out." But before Thompson could say another word or make another dismissive gesture, President Morrison's voice suddenly rang out through the store like a thunderclap, loud, sharp, and filled with absolute horror and disbelief. "Thompson, what are you doing? What incredibly rude thing are you saying right now?" The president's voice cracked like a whip through the air, causing everyone in the vicinity to jump. "This is Mr. and Mrs. Washington!" President Morrison's voice thundered through the store, each word sharp with anger and disbelief at what he was witnessing. The president quickly pushed Thompson aside, physically moving him out of the way, and immediately positioned himself in front of the elderly couple. He bowed deeply, a full, formal bow that showed profound respect and sincere contrition, his head nearly level with his waist. "Mr. Washington, Mrs. Washington," Morrison said, his voice trembling noticeably with a mixture of shock, horror, and deep embarrassment. "I sincerely apologize. I apologize from the bottom of my heart. Our staff has been terribly, inexcusably rude to you. This is completely unacceptable." Thompson's face twisted with complete confusion, his features contorting as his brain struggled to process what was happening. Mr. Washington? Who? I don't understand." "Mr. James Washington and Mrs. Dorothy Washington," President Morrison said, his voice still shaking with emotion. He turned to look at Thompson with eyes full of fury and disappointment. "They're like gods in our industry, Thompson, living legends. And you just threw Mr. Washington's wallet on the floor like garbage." Thompson's hands began to tremble violently, shaking so hard he could barely control them. With trembling fingers, he looked down at the business card he'd so dismissively grabbed moments before, and this time he actually read it carefully. "James Washington, former chairman, Imperial Hotel Chain, World Tourism Organization Honorary Advisor, International Hotel Association President Emeritus." Thompson's eyes widened to an almost comical degree, bulging from his face in pure shock. His mouth fell open. His breathing became rapid and shallow. He quickly grabbed Dorothy's card as well with shaking hands and read it with growing horror. "Dorothy Washington, former vice chairman, Imperial Hotel Chain, chairwoman, Hospitality Education Foundation." No, this can't be." Thompson's voice came out as barely a croak, hardly audible. When he turned the cards over and saw the back, Thompson felt all remaining blood drain from his body completely. Listed there in elegant script were the logos and titles from the world's most prestigious hotels: special advisor to the Ritz Paris, consultant to the Savoy London, board member of the Plaza New York. Dozens of the most exclusive properties on Earth. This is impossible. The real. Thompson's legs suddenly felt weak, unable to support his weight properly. These were legendary figures that absolutely no one in the travel and hospitality industry didn't know. More than that, they were current leaders who still wielded tremendous influence in the global tourism industry. Their recommendations could make or break hotels, their criticism could destroy reputations. And he had physically assaulted Mr. Washington's property, called them poor Social Security recipients, told them to leave, treated them with utter contempt, based solely on the color of their skin and their simple clothing. In Thompson's mind, he could literally hear the sound of his entire career, everything he'd built over 20 years, crumbling into dust and blowing away. "It's been quite a while, President Morrison," James said with quiet grace, his voice showing no anger despite everything that had happened. "I apologize for not announcing our visit in advance." President Morrison bowed even more deeply, and when he raised his head, there were actually tears of shame forming in his eyes. "Mr. Washington, Mrs. Washington, I cannot express how deeply sorry I am. Whatever happened here, whatever my employee did, the responsibility ultimately lies with me as the leader of this organization. Please accept my sincerest apologies." Thompson, finally understanding the catastrophic magnitude of what he'd done, dropped to his knees right there on the marble floor. Then he pressed his forehead to the ground in complete prostration, his body shaking with sobs. "Mr. Washington, Mrs. Washington, I'm so sorry. I'm so terribly sorry." Thompson's voice was thick with tears and desperation, all his earlier arrogance completely evaporated. "Please don't destroy my career, please! I have a family, a wife, 2 children in college. I have a mortgage, car payments, student loans. Please, I'm begging you. I'll do anything." Tears and mucus ran down Thompson's face in an undignified mess as he desperately apologized, his entire body trembling with fear and regret. The other staff members, seeing this dramatic scene unfold and finally understanding the gravity of what had transpired, also hurriedly bowed their heads in apology and respect. The atmosphere in the store had completely transformed. What had been tense and uncomfortable was now heavy with shocked silence and dawning realization. Maya stood frozen, her eyes wide with astonishment, her mouth slightly open. "Were you such incredible people all along?" she whispered. "It's ancient history," James said modestly, though his words still carried unmistakable weight and authority. "We're retired now. Just ordinary people." "That's absolutely not true," President Morrison interjected desperately, his voice still shaking. "Even now, countless companies and organizations seek Mr. and Mrs. Washington's guidance and expertise. Your influence in the industry remains enormous." Seeing the president's desperate attempt to show proper respect, James smiled, gently, a warm smile that seemed to ease some of the tension in the room. "President Morrison," James said calmly, "as I mentioned a moment ago, we didn't actually come here today to book travel. We came with a different purpose entirely, to observe the quality of your staff and how they treat all customers." The president's voice trembled as he bowed again. "I truly apologize. Whatever evaluation you make, whatever consequences you deem appropriate, I will accept them fully." However, what came from James's mouth next was completely different from what President Morrison had been expecting, fearing even. "Actually," James began, his tone conversational, "3 months ago at the National Travel Industry Conference, I had the opportunity to speak with Miss Santos here." "What?" Confusion spread across the president's face. His brow furrowed deeply as he tried to remember. "At that time," James continued, looking kindly at Maya, "Miss Santos shared with me that she wanted to treat every customer with sincerity and respect, regardless of their appearance or perceived wealth. But she was troubled because her supervisor consistently prevented her from doing so, telling her it was a waste of time." Surprise and recognition flashed in Maya's eyes. Her heart began racing as memories flooded back. "You may not remember," James said gently to Maya, "but we spoke briefly at the reception following the seminar. You were sitting next to us during the QA session." From the depths of Maya's memory, that scene came rushing back with sudden clarity. The seminar venue, the QA session she'd participated in nervously, and yes, the kind, gentle couple who had sat beside her, who had listened so attentively when she'd nervously shared her frustrations during the informal networking session afterward. Could it really have been? "That's right," James confirmed, his eyes twinkling. "So today, we came to see firsthand what kind of education and culture your company actually fosters. We wanted to see if your workplace supported or suppressed people like Miss Santos." James's warm smile grew wider. "And Miss Santos? You proved to be exactly as impressive as I thought you were. Despite pressure from your superior, despite the disapproval of your colleagues, you treated us with genuine kindness, respect, and professional courtesy. You have the true spirit of hospitality. Something hot and overwhelming welled up in Maya's chest. Tears began streaming down her cheeks before she could stop them. "Thank you so much," she managed to say through her tears. "Thank you." James reached into his bag and pulled out an elegant small box. Opening it carefully, he revealed a beautiful badge inside, gleaming gold and clearly of significant value and meaning. "This is the Sincere Service Award from the International Hospitality Association," James explained. "It's a special recognition that we present to individuals who demonstrate true service spirit and genuine hospitality. Very few people ever receive this honor." Maya's eyes widened in disbelief as James held out the badge toward her. "This award," James continued, "is for the heartfelt customer service we personally witnessed and experienced from you today. This is not merely a symbolic gesture. This badge carries real weight in our industry." Tears continued to flow down President Morrison's face now, too. Tears of gratitude mixed with deep regret and shame for not having recognized Maya's qualities sooner or protected her from Thompson's toxic influence. "Mr. Washington," Morrison said, his voice breaking, "I apologize profoundly. This situation exists because of my failure as a leader. My lack of proper supervision and oversight." "President Morrison," James interrupted gently but firmly, "you personally are not at fault here. We understand that Branch Manager Thompson's actions were his own arbitrary decisions, his own prejudices and failures. The other staff members clearly didn't approve of his behavior either, we could see that. However, they felt powerless to speak up against someone in authority." James's voice took on a slightly sterner note. "That said, there does need to be significant improvement in the environment and culture that allowed such behavior to persist and go unchecked for so long." President Morrison bowed his head with deep respect. "I absolutely will make those changes. I promise you. From this day forward, we will make service like Miss Santos's our standard. We will thoroughly implement customer service that never judges people by their appearance, that treats every person who walks through our doors with equal respect and dignity." Then Morrison turned to face Thompson, who was still on his knees, trembling. "As for you," Morrison's voice became cold and final. "Actually, I can no longer call you Branch Manager Thompson. You are terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building." Dorothy nodded quietly in agreement. "That's the appropriate decision. As long as someone with such discriminatory thinking remains in a position of authority, other staff members will never feel safe to do what's right." Thompson raised his tear-stained face, but he could see in everyone's eyes that there would be no reprieve, no second chance. He had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Looking at the devastated Thompson with something that might have been pity, James turned his attention back to Maya, his expression warming immediately. "Miss Santos," James said kindly, "as long as staff members with hearts like yours exist in this industry, we can have hope for its future. You give us great optimism." Fresh tears welled up in Maya's eyes. "Thank you. Thank you so much for seeing me, for recognizing." Her voice broke with emotion. "Miss Santos," Dorothy added gently, her voice like a warm embrace, "this badge has very special meaning. It's not just an award. It's a mission, a responsibility to spread true hospitality. We'd like you to take on a leadership role here, to guide and mentor the other staff members. We believe everyone here has good hearts. They simply lacked proper guidance and a safe environment to express their values." President Morrison looked around at all the assembled staff members, many of whom were watching with hopeful, emotional expressions. "Everyone," Morrison said, his voice thick with emotion, "I'm sorry. I'm deeply sorry for not noticing the toxic situation in this workplace sooner. I failed you all. You were suffering under Thompson's oppressive management style, and I wasn't paying close enough attention to what was really happening on the ground. That changes today." Relief and hope appeared on the faces of the staff members. "From this moment forward," Morrison declared, "this store will transform completely. We will learn real hospitality together as a team, with Miss Santos as our example and mentor. I will create an environment where each of you can provide heartfelt, genuine service to every customer without fear of retaliation or judgment. No one will ever need to hold back their compassion or integrity again." The staff members nodded, their expressions filled with hope and determination. "Thank you, Maya," several of them said. "Let's work together to make this place what it should be." The oppressed vitality and enthusiasm that had been suppressed for so long began to return, filling the store with new energy. The Washington couple nodded approvingly as they looked around, as if to say, This is how it should be. In the weeks and months that followed, Thompson was immediately terminated and word spread rapidly throughout the industry about what had happened. His abusive treatment of the legendary Washington couple, his blatant racism and discrimination, became a cautionary tale whispered about in hotel conference rooms and travel agency offices across the country. Other companies refused to hire him. He found himself completely shut out from the service industry he'd worked in for his entire adult life. However, the staff at Platinum Travel learned invaluable lessons from witnessing Thompson's downfall. They learned about the foolishness and danger of judging people by their appearance. They learned about the critical importance of true service spirit and treating every human being with dignity. Maya often reflected on Thompson's actions, using them as a constant reminder and warning for herself and others. "We must learn from Mr. Thompson's terrible mistakes," she would tell new employees during training sessions. "We must never, ever forget respect for customers. Service only works when there is mutual respect. If either side forgets respect, the entire relationship falls apart." At Platinum Travel, a new customer service standard was created and implemented, the Washington Standard. It was a comprehensive framework built on the principle of treating every customer with equal courtesy and respect, regardless of their appearance, race, age, or any other external factor. President Morrison himself personally trained all staff members on these new standards, making it clear that discrimination of any kind would result in immediate termination. The staff, working alongside Maya in her new leadership role, began truly relearning what authentic hospitality meant. The atmosphere in the store transformed completely and noticeably. The condescending, judgmental customer service of the Thompson era vanished entirely, replaced by warm, genuine smiles and heartfelt welcome for everyone who entered. One day, several months later, another customer in simple, modest clothing entered the store. Without hesitation, Maya approached with a smile radiating from her heart. "Welcome to Platinum Travel," she said warmly. "What kind of journey are you dreaming of today?" Her voice was filled with sincerity and genuine care, not practiced or fake, but real. She had learned to treat people not by their appearance, but by their humanity, to connect heart to heart. That was the true form of customer service that the Washington couple had taught her. The warm lighting in the store beautifully illuminated, the travel brochures displayed throughout the space. That light seemed symbolic, like the warm glow of hope, nurtured by hearts that truly cherish and respect all people. The staff now approached each and every customer with genuine respect and enthusiasm, having learned through Thompson's catastrophic failure the terrible cost of prejudice and the immense value of treating everyone with dignity. The teachings that the Washington couple had left behind had taken deep root in this store, becoming part of its DNA. Never judge people by their appearance. Sincerity and integrity are the most valuable assets anyone can possess. True hospitality is born from the heart, not from calculations about profit or status. Those teachings continued to resonate quietly through Platinum Travel every single day. Maya paused for a moment, taking a deep breath and looking around at the transformed workplace. The new Platinum Travel was exactly the environment she had always dreamed of, a place where kindness mattered more than sales figures, where every person was valued. And in her heart, feelings of deep gratitude toward the Washington couple dwelled permanently. A warm presence that reminded her daily of why this work mattered. In the welcoming space filled with customers' smiles and laughter, accompanied by soft music playing in the background, the spirit of true heartfelt service, the spirit of genuine hospitality, continued to live and breathe and grow, touching every interaction, every conversation, every dream of travel that walked through those doors.